Hello and welcome to Comic Book Wednesdays. I promised you something special this week, and I'm going to give you a rundown of my top 10 comics that I give to new people. Because quite a lot of people know that I'm into comics, they'll ask me what they should read if they're wanting to, get a start in it. The first advice I would give to someone wanting to get into comics is just to read them. It's not a major issue if you don't actually know some of the characters, because that's the only way you're going to get to know all the characters is by reading comics with them in them. Some people who are quite story minded will read through them really quickly and miss out some of the artwork in it. Other people who are really artistic will stop and end up just looking at the art and forget to actually read the story. But whatever happens, it's okay to reread. You can go through and read the story first so you get the gist of it and then go back and look at the art, or you can just have your mind blown looking at the art and then go back and work through the story. When you're reading comics, you'll get to know what works for you and what you enjoy from reading comics, so as long as you're enjoying it, you can't really be told you're doing it wrong. I've picked 10 graphic novels or comics that I think are good places to start for people interested in reading comics. They're the ones I'll usually lend out to people who are interested. So let's get started. I'm going to do them in no particular order, mostly because I can't put them into an order. I have too many favourites. The first comic is Mouse, A Survivor's Tale by Art Spiegelman. The comic is a biography of the artist's father. He was a Polish Jew and a Holocaust survivor. The way the story is told, the Jews are depicted as mice and the Germans are depicted as cats. And I believe it's the only comic ever to win a Pulitzer Prize. I think the reason I always give this comic to new readers is because it's a serious subject and it's so well done. I don't think there's any other comic book that's like Mouse in respect to its style and its subject matter, so that's why this is included on the list. It's a great comic and it's something a bit different from what you would usually expect when you think of comic books. The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen Volume 1 is next on our list. It was written by Alan Moore and illustrated by Kevin O'Neill. The first thing I'm going to say is don't judge it by that movie. The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen movie did not do the comic justice. If you've seen the movie, you know the gist of it. All of the heroes in this comic are characters from literature. There's Alan Quatermain, Mina Harker, the Invisible Man, Captain Nemo, and Jekyll and Hyde. The initial concept for it was the Justice League of Victorian England, but then they ended up just rolling every great work of fiction into one comic. If you're a big reader, you'll like this book because pretty much every character in it is either a character from a novel or the descendant of a character from a novel. It's got a great Victorian era steampunk feel to it, and it's just a great story and an engaging read. Sandman, Preludes and Nocturnes is just required reading for anyone wanting to get into comics because it's written by Neil Gaiman. The series follows Dream, who is basically an anthropomorphized version of Dreams. He's one of the Endless, which is just sort of like a big anthropomorphized group of deity type things. For example, he's got a sister called Death. I don't think I'm going to be able to explain this comic adequately, but you just need to know it's one of the great masterworks of comic book writing. Do you really need to read it? The next comic, Batman Year One, I've already reviewed in this channel, so I'm just going to say that it's a great comic and it introduces the dark, gritty Batman that we're used to now. It goes really deeply into Commissioner Gordon's character and his motivations. It's just a great starting point for anyone wanting to read Batman comics. Next up is another comic that I've already reviewed, DMZ, stands for Demilitarized Zone. It follows Matty Roth as he enters the demilitarized zone between the Free States and the United States during the Second American Civil War. It's written by Brian Wood and the artwork is by Riccardo Biccelli. It is currently one of my favourite comic book series, so that's why I give it to new readers. Right, we're on to number 6, The Walking Dead Days Gone By. It's the first Walking Dead comic. It's set in a world where everywhere's been overrun by zombies and it follows a group of survivors, and it's just fantastic. Things just keep getting worse and worse and worse for the characters, and you have to watch. The great thing about the series for zombie fans is that it's still ongoing, and it just means that there's no set time for them to have everything resolved by or to have everything finished by. I think that's one of the major downfalls of zombie movies, is that you're never going to have enough time to let like a full zombie apocalypse play out. It's just got to take snippets of little stories, whereas they have the time to let this happen in this. Next up is Scott Pilgrim's Precious Little Life by Brian Lee O'Malley, one of a very rare group of movies where they were adapted from comics and they didn't ruin it. Scott Pilgrim becomes obsessed with this girl Ramona, but then it turns out he has to fight her 7 evil exes so that they can continue dating. The comics are full of old video game references and music jokes, and it's just fantastic. If you've seen Scott Pilgrim and loved the movie, you will absolutely adore the comic books. If you haven't seen the movie, you will still absolutely adore the comic books. People are always asking me about manga series, so the one I'm going to recommend is Full Metal Alchemist. I think Full Metal Alchemist contains everything you could expect from a manga series. If you read that and you don't like it, you're probably not going to like other manga series. If you read it and you do, then it's a good starting off point for reading other stuff. The second to last book that I always give to new readers is Unknown Soldier. I've reviewed that here as well. I'm not talking about the classic Unknown Soldier, I'm talking about the second Unknown Soldier by Joshua Dysart. It's set in Uganda in 2002, so it's a bit more political than most comics you would expect, but it's extremely educational as well, and it's an engaging story. The final comic book I always give to new readers is Superman Red Sun by Mark Millar. Mark Millar is the ultimate what-if guy for comic book writing, and in this comic he basically said, what if Superman was raised in the Soviet Union? It's a fantastic parallel world comic book where you get to find out what would have happened, and the ending is absolutely fantastic. It just wraps up everything so perfectly and brilliantly. I'll just rave about it for ages if you let me, so I'm gonna just say go and read it. It contains loads of DC characters. It's got a Batman and a Superman obviously, and Wonder Woman, and the best Green Lantern Corps in the history of Green Lantern Corps. It is definitely one of my favourite comics ever. So I recommend, if you're a new reader or if you haven't read it, that you go and read it. In fact, I suggest that you go and read all 10 of them. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you can think of any other comics that you think would be good for new readers, then feel free to tell me in the comments. And if you are a new comic book reader, my last piece of advice for you is to remember that it's all a matter of taste. If you're enjoying reading a comic, then you are reading comics right. Thank you all for watching. I will have another video up next Wednesday. Have a good week.